Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're talking about 4 rare Washington quarters that could be worth thousands. These coins may look ordinary, but a small mistake during minting can make them super valuable. Stick around, because you might have one of these in your change right now. Let's talk about the 1989 P Washington quarter, which may seem like just another regular coin, but could actually be worth up to $1,900 or more. What makes this coin special? It's all about a minting error called an off-center strike. This happens when the coin isn't properly aligned during the minting process, causing part of the design to be shifted or cut off. What is an off-center strike? When coins are made, a die, a stamping tool, presses down on a blank metal disc called a planchet to create the design. Normally, this design is centered perfectly, but sometimes, the planchet isn't placed in the die just right. This misalignment causes the design to be off-center, and part of the image ends up getting cut off or shifted to one side. An off-center strike can result in a coin that looks different from the usual ones you see. The more misaligned the design is, the more valuable the coin can become. For example, if a large part of the image is cut off, collectors will find it more interesting and unique, and the price can rise significantly. Why is an off-center strike valuable? The reason an off-center strike is so valuable is because it's rare. Most coins are struck with perfect alignment, so when a coin has a misaligned design, it stands out as a mistake. Since fewer of these error coins are made, they're considered rarities among collectors. The more extreme the misalignment, the more valuable the coin. For example, a 1989 P Washington quarter with just a slight misalignment might be worth a couple of $100s. But if the design is heavily off-center, that coin could fetch up to $1,900 or more. The value depends on the extent of the error and the coin's condition. How to spot an off-center strike? To check if your 1989 P Washington quarter is an off-center strike, examine the design closely. Look at George Washington's portrait on the front of the coin. If part of the portrait is missing or shifted to one side, it could be an off-center strike. Similarly, check the reverse side for any part of the eagle or lettering that is cut off or shifted. Sometimes, the misalignment is subtle, with only a small part of the design moved, but even small errors can increase the coin's value. Why do collectors want these coins? Collectors are always looking for rare and unique coins, and off-center strikes are a great find. They're not just mistakes, they are coins with a story and a history that make them stand out. Plus, the rarity of the 1989 P Washington quarter with this error makes it a prized item for anyone building a collection. Let's talk about the 1986 P Washington quarter, which might seem like just another regular coin, but some of these quarters are worth a lot more than their face value due to a special minting error known as a die clash. If you're lucky enough to find one, it could be worth up to $3,000. What is a die clash? A die clash happens when the front die, the one that strikes the image of George Washington, and the back die, the one that strikes the eagle and other elements on the reverse, accidentally collide without a coin between them. Dies are the tools used to stamp the designs onto the coin, and they're very powerful. When these two dies strike each other, they leave behind faint, ghost-like images on the coin. These images come from the opposite die, so you might see parts of the eagle or other reverse designs showing up on the front side of the coin. This happens because the pressure from the collision pushes part of the design from the reverse die onto the front die. Why is it valuable? Normally, the front and back of the coin are struck perfectly with clear designs from each die, but when a die clash happens, it creates an unusual and unique appearance that collectors love. It's a mistake, but it's not just any mistake, it's a rare, hard-to-find error, and that's what makes these coins so valuable. A 1986 P Washington quarter with a die clash error can be worth much more than its face value of 25 cents. The price can go as high as $3,000, depending on how clear the die clash is and the condition of the coin. The clearer the ghostly image or marks left by the reverse die on the obverse, the more valuable the coin becomes. How to spot a die clash? To check if your 1986 P Washington quarter has a die clash, you need to look closely at the front of the coin, especially around George Washington's face. This is where you're most likely to see the ghostly images from the reverse design. These marks might look like faint, blurry parts of the eagle or letters from the reverse side. They will usually appear in the open space near the portrait, or even near the edge of the coin. Sometimes, the clash is hard to notice because the images are faint, so be sure to take a good look at the coin. If you see strange, blurry details that don't belong on the front of the coin, that's a sign of a die clash. Why are die clash coins sought after? Collectors are always looking for rare and unique coins, and the 1986 P. Washington quarter with a die clash is a special find. A coin with this error is much more valuable than a regular one. The rarity of the mistake and the interesting appearance of the coin make it a must-have for many coin collectors. These die clash coins are not easy to find, which is why they can fetch high prices. Because it's an error from the minting process, it tells a story of how the coin was made, and that makes it even more interesting to collectors. Now, let's take a look at the 1981 D. Washington quarter, which might seem like just another coin from the 1980s, but it can actually be quite valuable, especially if it has a die crack. A die crack is a special kind of minting error, and it can make your coin worth as much as $3,000. What is a die crack? A die crack occurs when the die, the metal tool used to stamp the design onto the coin, becomes damaged. Dies are used repeatedly during the minting process, and over time, the pressure from striking so many coins can cause small cracks to form on the die. When this happens, the crack gets transferred onto the coins that are struck next, leaving a visible line or crack on the surface of the coin. So, when a die cracks, it leaves behind a raised line on the coin's surface. This line can appear anywhere on the coin, but it's most noticeable on the obverse side, which is where George Washington's portrait is located. The crack may look like a crack in the design, or sometimes it might just appear as a raised line. It's a small mistake, but collectors love these types of errors because they're rare and unique. Why is a die crack valuable? A die crack is valuable because it's not something that happens very often. Most coins are struck with a perfect die, meaning there are no cracks or lines. But when a die crack does happen, it makes that coin special. The rarity of die cracks is what makes them so valuable to collectors. People who collect coins are always on the lookout for these rare minting errors, and they're willing to pay top dollar to add them to their collections. The 1981 D. Washington quarter is one of those coins that can become much more valuable if it has a die crack. Some of these quarters have sold for as much as $3,000, depending on the size and location of the crack. The more noticeable and distinct the crack, the more valuable the coin can be. In addition to the die crack, other minting errors can make the coin even more valuable, like off-center strikes or weak strikes, but the die crack is what makes it stand out. How to spot a die crack. To find out if your 1981 D. Washington quarter has a die crack, start by examining the front of the coin, especially around Washington's portrait. Look closely for any lines or cracks running through the design. These cracks can appear in various places, but the most common spot is near Washington's bust, the front profile, or the letters around the portrait. The crack may look like a thin line that runs through the coin, or it may appear more like a series of small marks along the edge of the design. It's important to look carefully because die cracks can be subtle, especially if they're not very deep or obvious. Let's talk about the 1991 D. Washington quarter, which might seem like just another regular coin, but some of these quarters are worth much more than their face value. That's because some of them have a double die error, which makes the coin worth up to $1,680. What is a double die error? A double die error happens when the coin is struck more than once by the same die, but the die isn't aligned properly during the second strike. When this happens, the design on the coin gets duplicated or shifted, creating a blurry or doubled effect. It's kind of like when you try to stamp something multiple times, but the second stamp is slightly off from the first one so the design overlaps or shows twice. On a double die coin the effect is most noticeable on certain design elements, like the date or the mint mark. For the 1991 D. Washington quarter, this error typically appears in the year 1991 and the mint mark D on the front of the coin, where George Washington's portrait is. The numbers or mint mark can look doubled or blurry, giving the coin a unique, slightly distorted look. Why is it valuable? The 1991 D Washington quarter with a double die error is valuable because this kind of mistake is rare. Most of the time, the minting process goes smoothly, and the design is perfectly struck. But when a double die error occurs, it makes the coin stand out, and collectors get excited about it. These errors are not common, so collectors are always on the lookout for them, willing to pay a premium price for coins that have this type of error. For a 1991 D Washington quarter with a double die error, the price can go as high as $1,680. The more pronounced the doubling is, the higher the coin's value. If the doubling is clear and easy to see, then collectors will be more interested in buying it, driving up its price. How to spot a double die error. To find a double die error on a 1991 D Washington quarter, you need to look closely at the date and the mint mark. Start by examining the numbers in the year 1991 and the D mint mark. Look for any signs of doubling, where the numbers or mint mark look blurry or shifted to the side, making them appear as though they have been struck twice. Sometimes the doubling can be faint, but if you look closely, you'll be able to spot it. The doubling effect may appear as a shadow or a more obvious separation of the numbers. For example, you might notice that the 1 in 1991 looks like it has a second 1 slightly to the side or below it. Similarly, the mint mark D might look like it's doubled, giving it a blurry or split appearance. Why are double die coins sought after? Collectors love finding coins with double die errors because they are rare and unique. A double die error can make an otherwise ordinary coin into a special, valuable piece. The 1991 D Washington quarter is a perfect example of this, and if you're lucky enough to find one with a double die, you could have a coin worth a lot more than 25 cents.